Okay, quick question. Is anybody a TaskRabbit here? Has anyone used TaskRabbit? So I wanted to give some examples of how I've used TaskRabbit. You know that stack of 2,000 business cards that you have on your desk that you always want to input somewhere? Well, the very first time I used a TaskRabbit was to input 2,000 cards into a database. I've used it for delivery, I've used it for handyman services, so pretty much anything that you need to do that you suck at, you can get a TaskRabbit for. And leading the charge of the rabbits is Leah. Leah, come on down. And we have Laura from USA Today who's going to be doing the interview. Right. Welcome, ladies. We have a pregnant Leah here.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
I'm bigger every day. Okay, so we have 20 minutes. So Leah, you have an interesting history. You started your company in 2008, which I think is considered the winter of fundraising. Mm-hmm. And as people in this room probably are aware, it's gotten a little colder recently. Mm-hmm. So tell us how it feels compared to then, and how was it to start in a year where people were not so generous with granting investments?
Yeah, it was definitely an interesting time. I feel like from 2008 to today, I really have seen the entire cycle, right? When I first left my job at IBM to start the TaskRabbit site, it was in June of 2008. By September, I had built the site and got it launched, but that was right when we were going to this tough economic downturn. So I didn't really plan very well, so to speak, to start a business and to have to fundraise money. And really no one was writing checks at that time, particularly early stage, an unknown entrepreneur, an idea that, was nascent, had never really been done before. I heard a lot of stories about Cosmo.com or My Lackey, from sort of the early 2000s and 90s. And so it was a really tough time. Now, what I loved about that time, though, is that companies that really did have a great idea and a great business model, they were able to get funding. It was really hard, and it was really hard for TaskRabbit. And, I sort of, right before I raised my seed round of funding, it was literally day to day, like, should I keep going? Does this make sense? But we got the round done, and I joined an incubator program that Facebook was running in the summer of 2009, and so I got to meet a lot of other companies at a similar stage in time and saw what their fundraising process was like, and it was hard for everyone. Fast forward a few years, we raised the majority of the money that we've done, which is $50 million, in the 2011, 2012 timeframe, and that was a time where it was just really, really easy to fundraise, right? And people were writing checks left and right, and the valuations were very high. And, we're definitely seeing the market come back down now, for sure. And I think now what I'm hearing that's important, and what I've always believed is important, are positive unit economics, path to profitability, good gross margins, really creating a business that is sustainable. And I think somewhere in the middle of this market, a lot of companies got lost in sort of the hype and the money, and they weren't creating sustainable businesses. So I'm really actually appreciative of where we started and when we started, because I think that it really taught us to be disciplined with our capital and create a really sustainable long-term business.
So, and you think you're expecting to be profitable this year?
That's right. Yeah.
But even when fundraising was much more available, you had to retrench, right? You had some layoffs in 2013, and you also significantly changed your business model in terms of going from an auction-based pricing for your taskers to hourly, which was not without some controversy, I think. But can you tell us about how changing that fundamental part of the cost model helped you sort of maybe extend your runway?
Yeah, I think this is a great example of, this was a time when we had a lot of cash in the bank. We had just come off, I think, the Series B or Series C round of funding. We had a lot of money in the bank, but we saw the growth curve, and although we were growing, we knew that we could grow faster, and we felt like if we retrenched and reorganized and put out a product that was more sort of up to date with what the consumer experience required at that time, we could grow even faster. And so remember, 2008, iPhone had just come out. No one was really using location-based technologies. We were very, very early. And so we started with this auction-based bidding model because that's sort of what I knew. That was what was familiar. eBay was doing very well. But over the course of the next 2, 3, 4 years, the consumer mindset really shifted to a more on-demand, streamlined mobile experience. And so we saw that coming, and we knew that the path that we were on product-wise, it just wasn't going to get us there fast enough. So we reorganized the team, we hired more mobile engineers, we completely rebuilt the product from scratch, like threw away code and started over, and we launched a new mobile experience in a new test market, London, which was also very strategic because we wanted to test this new product model in a market where no one had really heard of us before, so that we could really understand if it was going to work. And so we launched in London in, I think it was like November of 2013, and we left the US market alone. We let the US market continue to run with the auction-based bidding product. And we did this A/B test of London versus the US market. And what we saw was London growing much, much, much faster than any city in the US. Conversion rates were higher, unit economics were better, taskers were making more money. It was just more efficient all around. Net promoter score, the happiness of the users were much, much higher. So we were really confident that the right call for the business was to migrate this product back to the US market. Now, not without controversy, because you take millions of customers, 30,000 taskers, and you tell them, we're going to completely change the way you do business. Not everyone's going to be happy, right? So what I'm really glad that we did, though, is we got the proof points and we got the data in the London market, so we knew it was going to work. And so sort of the vocal minority that didn't like the new product experience, that liked the auction bidding-based model, we knew it was a tiny group, and even though they were vocal at the time, we knew that we could push through it, and the business would be better for it. So it was a tough decision. It wasn't easy, but in the end, you know, our mobile usage has increased, you know, threefold over the last year, over the last 12 months. We've been growing double digits month over month for the last 12 months, and so it was just something that we had to do as a business, and we did. And I think that because we started in 2008 at a time where it was tough to raise capital, it was a tough economic time, we kind of have this DNA about us that we're not afraid to make tough decisions and make hard decisions that we know are going to be better for the long-term sustainability of the business.
Now, also during that time, the gig economy has really gone through several stages. I mean, some people saw this as the new coming, and then I think others, you know, think that it's going to implode on itself. Those are two ends of the spectrum, of course. But I mean, for instance, just to throw out some news points here. Uber, for example, just entered into a $100 million settlement with its drivers with some of its drivers over whether they were independent contractors or employees. And the question hasn't been resolved by the courts. HomeJoy is an example of a company that started off with an independent contractor model, and lawsuits related to that are believed to have been why it had to fold. So, but you have stayed with the independent contractor model. Why is it, and what do you do about these very real criticisms that employees are not protected by labor laws? They are not really making enough to live on. And you know, whatever your politics may be, you may deal with dissatisfaction as some of these more temporary workers migrate into the full-time workforce.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely a hot topic right now. So a few things. So one, you know, when I founded the company in 2008, really my vision was to create a new way for people to work. I saw that we were going into this tough economic time, that people were looking for flexibility in their income, in their schedules. They were looking to make ends meet in between jobs. Now, what's happened as the economy has improved, that mindset, that trend of the freelance economy, of the future of work, that hasn't changed. It's only increased and become more prominent. 34% of Americans today consider themselves freelance contractors. Not all of them are in the gig economy, right? The gig economy accounts for a much, much lower percentage, 2-3% right now. But there is a trend here of the future of work that is changing. And so, we have kept our independent contractor status because as we look at our tasker community, we've spent a lot of time asking them, what is important to you? Above anything else, it's always been flexibility in schedule, and it's always been, I want to choose who I want to work for, at what time, and the price that I'm going to get hired at. So we are set up very different from a lot of other companies who set their own prices. TaskRabbit is one of the only marketplaces that allows its independent contractors to really set up their own businesses, set up their own hourly rates, opt into up to 40 different categories to get hired in. So we've spent a lot of time focused on the tasker side, building tools, resources, and a community around what is going to be helpful to them. I never wanted to create a cleaning company. I never wanted to create a handyman services. I always wanted to create a platform where people could find new ways of working and really share the skills and services that they have. So it's a very different mission and a very different model, and I think that's also one of the big reasons why we've sort of remained outside of this lawsuit, sort of legal arena, because we are set up infrastructure-wise just very differently than some of these other companies. Now, I believe that it's not a binary decision between having benefits, having safety measures, and having a community of independent contractors. I think we can do both. I think that the model of labor is something that needs to be sort of rethought for this century. And so one of the things, as an example, that we're doing at TaskRabbit is providing all of our taskers in the community with discounts on healthcare, with access to discounts to transportation, to cell phones, anything they need to build their business, to do their job better. We want to do more. And we've started to kind of butt up against the laws and how much we can provide to our taskers to be a resource. Like a great example is training. We'd love to offer our taskers training and career development. Say there's a handyman tasker that loves painting but also wants to learn how to, mount flat screen TVs, because that's a really lucrative, area to get hired in. We want to be able to offer, videos, courses, training to help that tasker build out their service capability and get hired in more ways. But right now, the way the labor laws are set up, that would be very much a gray area in us providing that training. So we're working with congressmen, with senators, with lobbyists to figure out how we can continue to cultivate a strong, long-term sustainable community that is safe, that does have benefits, but that also has the flexibility that these taskers want and are looking for.
What is the biggest hurdle or pressure on your margins? I mean, is it as you begin to provide more of an infrastructure? Is it engineering talent?
I really see TaskRabbit not so much as a tech company. It's really a people operations business. When you utilize TaskRabbit, how many people here have used TaskRabbit, the app? Fair amount of folks. So if you've used TaskRabbit, you don't think about, I just used the app and how great it was and easy to connect with a tasker. That's all good. That should work. But what you tell people is, I met this wonderful tasker and he did this job for me and he was so great. And you remember the interaction you had with that person. It's all about the people operations behind it. So, our team is relatively small overall. We're 60 people total. Most of us in San Francisco. We have a small office in London running operations there. Our engineering product design team makes up a little more than a third of that. It's really the operational side, the community, the recruiting, the engagement, the matching that goes on, that really makes, I think, for a high quality, consistent experience every time.
Now, you had another change just earlier this year. You stepped aside as CEO, you're executive chairman now, and Stacy Philpott Brown, right? Is the CEO. Now she came on from Google 3 years ago, and she's got a lot of initiatives. She's also rare in the sense that she's an African-American woman who's leading a tech startup in an industry that has a very established track record of not having as many women and underrepresented minorities. And then we noticed that you just signed on to a Black Congressional Caucus initiative to increase the number of African Americans and Latinos. And you're disclosing your numbers. So I wanted to talk to you about, first of all, just the decision to step aside but still be involved as the founder. What's that like, and what did you have to kind of do to let go?
Yeah, well, it's something I'd been working on for quite a while with Stacy, something we've been talking about for a long time. You know, it has been 8 years that I have founded and been running the company. We've scaled up in a tremendous way. You know, the business in the last 12 months has grown over 300%. And so the business is in a very strong place. And so as Stacy and I were chatting, I brought her on 3 years ago as Chief Operating Officer. I knew that I wanted a strong business leader and a business partner for myself whose real passion and background is product design and engineering. And so I brought Stacy on board out of Google. Her and I had met about 1.5 years earlier. And so it was a long time that we've known each other. And so over the course of the last 3-4 years that we've known each other, you know, we started talking about what it would look like as the business hit scale, as we approach profitability, things that, you know, I want to do and I'm passionate about, and areas that she wants to develop in her career as well. And we just felt like now was a great time to do this transition. And the team, you know, is really excited, knows Stacy very well. Of course, I want to stay involved as the founder. This has been my baby for the last 8 years. So I'm still there and around and in the office. But one thing that's always been really important to both Stacy and myself has been building a culture around diversity. I think we've been very fortunate that, you know, we've had 2 female C-level execs in the company for so long. There's very few startups that have 2 C-level women, you know, running the company to start with. And so when we made the decision that it was time to do the transition and have Stacy step in, we also thought it'd be a great time to run some more diversity initiatives. And we're using the partnership we did with the Congressional Black Caucus as a model, really. We see that as a template that we can use to kind of go out to other minority groups, to other areas where we want to build more diversity and create these types of partnerships. I think building awareness, building partnerships, collaborating with others in this space that have expertise on how to bring more people into the pipeline, how to hire better for diversity is really important. It's not something that you can just do on your own with your own network. You really need to expand your network. And so, you know, we've actively taken steps to do that all along, and it's certainly something we're going to continue to support and grow as we move forward.
Now, you were just at your college and giving the commencement speech, and, you know, related to the hiring and diversity, the long-held reason given, although I think many people would argue with it, but is the pipeline. Well, there's not enough women, or women leave tech. In that speech, you exhorted the graduates to have big, hairy, ambitious, or audacious goals. I can't read my own writing here. And I'd like you to expostulate about that. And I mean, I think particularly for somebody who, you know, did you think you would be in tech, and would you stick it out? And how do you talk to people who may not feel like that's the route for them, but you perhaps see where it is a more open field?
Yeah, you know, I spent 8 years at IBM as a programmer. And when I was at IBM, I really enjoyed my time there. And I thought, this is a great company. I can spend my career here. And, you know, one day I had this idea for TaskRabbit. And it just really captured my mindset. And I became really passionate about it. I think I've always been the type of personality that, does have a big vision and does have big goals. I think the challenge and what TaskRabbit has really taught me is how do you break that down into smaller steps to get there? And I think so many times people, men and women, can get wrapped up in all the things that can go wrong and, how big and hairy those audacious goals can be. But I think if you have those goals, but keep in mind, every day, little things that you can do to move that goal forward, to get pointed in the right direction. And it doesn't have to be tech. It could be, any aspect of your life. That, for me, in the last 8 years, has been a big learning. It makes me feel like, no matter what it is, people can really tackle anything. And just being able to break it down into smaller pieces and make progress every day is what it's all about.
So big, hairy, audacious goals and little hairy steps.
That's right, little tiny hairy steps.
I don't know if we had time for questions. I didn't see the card. No, that's it. Okay, I'm sorry. Well, you should definitely find Leah. What's the best way to contact you?
I'm on Twitter, Leah Busque. I'd love to chat, yeah.
Okay. Let's give her a hand.
All right, thank you.